Two. Hey, Mystic Magic Podcast fans. We are going to have a tremendous episode today. I use the word tremendous on purpose because this man has been through a tremendous journey and he's our guest today. His name is Robert Raymond Riopel. He's an international best-selling author. He's an app designer, an entrepreneur, and a trainer who has spent the past 18 plus years traveling around the world sharing his passion. Robert draws on his journey from humble beginnings to financial freedom at the age of 32. He inspires individuals into tapping into their greatness. Realizing that he's not the only person that struggles, Robert's clues open individuals up to the possibilities that lie within them. Welcome, Robert Riopel, to Mystic Magic.
Oh, thank you for having me, Celeste. I've been looking forward to this because when someone has a name that is celestial, how can you not be ready to get mystic and with magic? Oh, I'm ready.
Yes, my divine destiny. Yes. So, from what I heard about your story, you were taught that working hard and staying with a company for 25 years and being loyal will bring you financial stability. And you learned that that wasn't really true, but you found a way to be happy, successful, and financially prosperous. Tell us about that journey, please.
Well, I'll tell you, it came through a lot of stumbling, bumbling, making mistakes, but learning. And also having amazing people in my life that aren't willing to let me play smaller than I am. Because you're so right. I was growing up that like, here's the box. Don't question the box. Don't even think about outside the box. Actually, just ignore the boxes there. Just stay within it. And, one of the people I am the most blessed to have in my life is my amazing wife, because for her, it's like, what box are you talking about?
Great.
There's no box. There's no box. And so, when I was taught to work hard to stay loyal, that was what I was doing. But also in 21 years of age, I'm laid off from the third company. I'm starting to think it's me, Celeste. I'm starting to get a complex. I'm like, why is it every company I start with, all of a sudden they're closing down a couple of years later? Am I a bad omen on this? And in the beginning, especially, I was a very closed-minded person to anything outside of that box. But from my journey through life, I've learned to not only be open to other things, but to embrace, what's out there, because it's shown me that I went from struggling to starting to become an entrepreneur, to going into financial stress, and then finding personal development, which taught me to really introspect who I am and be open to other things, and also being able to go from that financial stress to financial freedom at a young age. And it's like, wow, that worked. And today, man, if someone says, well, this is possible, instead of me going, no, it's not, I go, oh, tell me more. Because I've learned the more open I am, the more open I am.
Yeah. Now you've like come close to losing businesses in addition to losing jobs. What was that journey like? Because I know that that was part of your reversal.
Yeah. Well, when I lost that third job, the only thing in our economy, because what people would perceive as real jobs, our economy was in the tanks. I live in Alberta in Canada, and I couldn't find a real job. So because I was taught you do something to take care of your family, even if you don't like it, you do whatever it takes. And I started delivering pizzas for a little company called Domino's Pizza. And because of my work ethic, I became a manager a short while later. And as soon as I did, my wife became my assistant, and we started doing what we know to do. We started working hard, open to close 7 days a week. And as we're doing this for about a year and a half, we're now qualified to be franchisees. And I don't know how much you know about Domino's Pizza, Celeste, but you can't just buy a franchise. You actually have to manage a store successfully for at least a year, meet a bunch of criteria. And if you do, then you qualify to be a franchisee, and they will waive the upfront franchise fee. You still have to have the money to buy or build a store. And we're in a year and a half. We're qualified to be franchisees. We have no money. We're making very little. When all of a sudden my franchisee makes the announcement that, guess what? I'm done with Domino's Pizza. I'm going to be selling the 2 stores. And I went into instant panic mode. Because in my mind, it was like, here we go again. But now it's going to be my wife and I that lose our jobs. And my thought, pattern of thinking was, well, we better start calling the other franchisees in the city and find out who needs a manager. And my wife looks at me and she says, why would we do that? Why don't we just buy the store? And I look at her, I'm like, because we don't have any money. That's why we won't buy the store. And because of our passion, though, we decided to start figuring out how can you buy a business if you don't have money. And again, we made a lot of stumbles and mistakes over the next 4 months. But every time something went wrong, we learned from it. And to the point where we had the confidence, we knew what to say and what not to say. And also we were able to not get the financing for our store. We actually were able to get 100% financing for both the stores that my franchisee had for sale. Wow. And at the age of 23, we became franchisees. And it's almost like, oh, we're now successful. But here's the problem. We knew how to run a store, but we didn't know how to run a business. And there's a huge difference between those two. And luckily, again, we have tenacity. Here we are. We've bought these 2 stores. They're not doing very well. And our mind goes, we can't afford an accountant. We'll do it on our own. We're already working 80 hours a week in the store. How did we think we were going to do the accounting? So that got way behind. A couple of years in, all of a sudden we're getting that knock from the government saying, you're a business. You're supposed to do something called paperwork and get it to us. We, out of necessity, we hired an accountant. And when we went through the stress, but got everything straightened out, all of a sudden they're looking at us going, how did you guys make it these last couple of years? There's no way you should have been able to succeed. Thank goodness ignorance was bliss at that point, and we didn't know what we didn't know. Our whole philosophy was, if there's still money in that bank account, we must be doing okay. And we made it work. But now that we knew the numbers, we were able to start making the adjustments and start doing better. And we started making some pretty good money. But Celeste, we did something. I hope I don't shock you and your audience too big with this. We started doing something that probably no one you've ever met has ever done before. So the question is, before I tell you, are you ready, Celeste? Are you ready for this?
I am ready.
Okay. We started spending more money than we were earning. I know you've never heard of anybody who's ever done that before, right? And by the time we were franchisees for 8 years, we're now over $150,000 in personal debt and going down quickly. And I don't know if for me, I've never experienced debt or stress like financial stress.
Sure.
Oh, and because of that financial stress, we were finally open to personal development. And someone had introduced us to a training, and we went to a 3-day training, not really wanting to be there, but we showed up. And while we were in that training, we learned why we were handling the money the way we were, how the not managing it was causing the stress, learned how to manage it. More importantly, we learned to take ownership of our debt, quit blaming other people. Because I was good at that. Well, I gave them money for investing and they invested it wrong and lost it. Yeah, but I'm the one that gave them the money. So taking that ownership was a huge step. And then third, we learned also, if we want to get out of debt, what did we need to do? And unfortunately, a statistic in North America is only 3% of people will ever actually do something with the information they've learned. And probably the only reason we did when we left that weekend is because we knew we had to do something, because something had to change. And because of that, we ended up going from over the $150,000 in personal debt to actually being retired completely financially free 9 months later at the age of 32.
Wonderful. Now, your wife sounds pretty amazing. I mean, what was her state of mind that just knew, hey, stop thinking so small,
Well, it comes from her upbringing, because we both born youngest of our families. I'm the youngest of 4. She's youngest of 5. And she was raised by a single mother who basically said, you don't rely on anybody, especially a man. You take care of yourself and you find ways to do stuff. So she brought that programming in to our relationship. And if you look at it, we met when we were 13. We started dating when we were 16. We got married when we were 19. And we actually just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations. Y'all did that right.
Well, I just don't calculate how old I am, though. Don't do the calculation on my age.
What matters is you look great. Okay.
Oh, there you go. Thank you very
Um,
much.
I heard you talking to Vision at my Valley about Vital, and I also think that the telesem or the seminar that you went to might be associated with a well-known presenter and book.
Yes,
Was that
absolutely.
and tell us about how you got on that track.
Yeah. Well, when we were introduced to T. Harbecker, he was actually only in Canada at the time, being a fellow Canadian, and he was in Alberta and BC. We went into actually not even 10 kilometers away from where I live is where we went to that first training, and it changed our life. And because we went to the Millionaire Mind Intensive based on his book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, actually his book wasn't written back then. He was doing all the trainings himself. And when we created the financial freedom following what he had taught us, that's when I found my passion. My passion was to teach because I believed if I could even help one person do what we had been able to do, go from financial struggle to financial success, it'd make it all worthwhile. And I started on that path. And for years, he had been saying, I'm looking for trainers, but you had to have a lot of experience in front of a lot of people. And I had never trained before. But of course, I have passion. My favorite
Yeah.
word in the whole world is passion. And I ended up becoming his very first protege, the very first person to ever teach his material other than him. And not only did I go on to teach it around the world, but I started training almost all the trainers that use around the world at the same time. And so, yes, I'm a very big believer in the information because it's worked in my life. And now with that information, I've personally taught over 500,000 people myself, because when we proved that someone other than him could teach it, all of a sudden we exploded throughout North America. And then from North America, the two of us launched into Asia in 2007 in Singapore, where we had 6,000 students for the 3-day weekend. And now we're all around the world. BC, of course, before COVID, we were doing the live trainings.
See, I called BC before Celeste, but listen, I remember that book.
Was there such a
I
thing
think
before Celeste, though?
which Celeste are you referring to? The ultimate Celeste or this individual? The answer is no to both. But I remember this book being at Agape. I think we were given a bunch of free copies, and I'm like, well, how could he be making any money if he's giving this stuff away? What is the principle behind that that allows somebody to do something like that?
Well, I'll let you know, especially with Agape, because when we released the book in 2005, and I'm blessed that my wife and I are acknowledged in the acknowledgments of that book because of the role we played when he was writing it and stuff. And what would happen is he's a brilliant businessman, and you can take a lot of lessons from that. See, it's just like, as an example, I have my first book, Success Left a Clue. And I now love for people to get the digital download of it. And we can talk about that at the end, because I know that when people get an impact from the book, they're going to want to do more with me.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about the front end of, giving a gift like that. I'm looking at the bigger picture of what can a potential person who is moved by my information and passionate about what I'm teaching, what more can they do? And we have, when we do a weekend training, we're offering other programs. And the key is to get people to come to the program, the training first. And so when people would buy, when we first launched the book, this is where it really came through Agape as an example, is if you bought our big package, you got 50 copies of the book as one of the bonuses. And so then people would do that. And so they'd have 50 books. So they'd be giving them away to friends and family and telling people, you got to read this book, because it was also a brilliant marketing tool, because that's how he went to #1 on New York Times selling list within the first week out, is because he knows how to market. And not only is a brilliant trainer, but he's a brilliant businessman.
Yeah. Now, when you were speaking to Vision, it sounded to me like a prosperity consciousness when you were talking about VITAL, vital.
Yes.
Now, I've been basing prosperity on 4 principles: service, forgiveness, gratitude, and purpose. What is the meaning of each of the letters of VITAL, and how does that work with gaining financial success?
Well, and vital that's part of my new book that I'm writing right now called The Authority Key. And I use that vital because I love acronyms. As long as
Mhm.
it's easy for me to remember, I'm good. And so
Yes, me too.
vital, I call it the authority master key, because a master key is a key that can open any door. And this is how you
Mhm.
can become an authority. And the V stands to be for virtuoso. And a virtuoso is a person who becomes good at something, learns something, a specialist, but they're also willing to jump in and just start learning. So when I look back at my life, everything I've done, especially the things I've become successful at, I started where I could. I didn't say I have to be at the top. I started in look, I became TR Becker's assistant for a while, where I would shine his shoes because we couldn't find someone at the hotel to do it, or I'd press his shirt, and I would do it with a smile, because being
Mhm.
his assistant, I was there to be of service, no attachment, no agenda of I better
Mhm.
get this, I better get that. It was like, how can I serve? Because a side benefit is, as I was serving, I'm now spending more time with this brilliant man than his staff were. And I was getting more insights. He was actually mentoring me, and he didn't even know he was. He was teaching me what it truly took to be a great trainer. So my benefit was huge, and I just had to put a little work in. But most people resist that. They go, I'm not doing that. When I train a trainer, one of their first jobs is they have to be my stage manager, because I want to see how attention to detail they are on setting the stage up. Is it like, well, this is out of place? Well, that's no big deal. Well, if that's no big deal, your students are going to be no big deal, plain and
Mhm.
simple. But if you have attention to detail here, as a trainer, you can be very attentive to your audience. So I watch people. So become a virtuoso. Whatever you want to do in life that you want to be great at, find a way to just get started in learning, jump in full force, and be of service. That's the big part. Be of service when you're doing it.
Excellent.
The I stands for make an imprint or an impression. And so if you look back, why was I the very first person he ever made his protege? Well, I'm a student, and my wife and I are volunteering. You're talking about virtuoso. We were volunteering for 38 events a year of his at our own expense. And luckily, we were only in Canada at the time. So we were living in our RV. It was easy to travel. We were just starting to go down to Seattle. And one day, all of a sudden, he sees me. We're at a 5-day training at camp. And he sees me. He goes, Robert, get in my vehicle. I'm like, okay. And I'm his assistant at the time. And I said, what's up? He says, are you ready? Am I ready for what? He says, are you ready to take over? He says, I've got to write my new program. We've got our guest on tonight. I need you at the end. Just take 5 minutes, give these instructions. He told me what to say. Thank our guest, give these instructions, send everybody to bed. 5 minutes. That's all it is. And Celeste, this is why I say it's amazing how 5 minutes can change your life. Because that 5 minutes launched my whole training career. And years later, we're friends, because we've become friends. We're now at meals together, stuff like that. And we're having a conversation. And he says, out of the blue, he goes, do you know why I put you on stage that first time? And I'm like, no. He says, because I could not ignore you anymore. He said, you were always showing up, being of service. He says, I remember standing on stage at one of our breaks, trying to talk to a student. You're running a meeting off to the side, and your energy is so amazing. I could not focus on the student because I kept getting pulled over to your energy. And in that moment, I decided you were going to be the one to help me out.
Great.
See, I made an impression. I imprinted that I was there to be of service. And if you want to be successful, that's what being of service comes to. It will make an impression on people, and you'll imprint. And the most amazing people will now be attracted to your energy that you can't even think of attracting. It's phenomenal. So that's the I. The T stands for tractable. And tractable means you have to be moldable, malleable. How many people, and I'm sure you've experienced this, Celeste, someone says, teach me. And you try to teach them, but they're so stuck in their ways. You're like, I thought you wanted me to teach me. Well, yeah, but I don't think that'll work.
Why'd you come to me then? Yes, I do know that.
Oh, so you have experienced that, right? And that's probably another one of the reasons I've been able to have the success I have, is because I put the ego to the side. And it's like, you're where you're at because of what you know. I'm not at that level. So you obviously know something. When I am a mentor student to someone, it's like, tell me what I need to do. I'm not going to ask questions. I'm just going to do it. And that's what I do with my students, is when I bring on them, because I love training trainers. Oh, I love training trainers. And if they come on as a mentoring student, I let them know I'm not here to coddle you. I'm not here to, are you okay? What's the holding you back? I'm here to say, if you want to be where I'm at, do this, do this, do this. And every time I give them a task, here's your next task. They know, because it's in our agreements, that until they've done it, they don't come back to me. Even if it takes them months, they've paid all their money up front. But until they are willing to do the work, what can I teach them? And that tells me who's going to be moldable, malleable versus the ones that are like, right? And I love to work with people who are willing to learn because, to the level I'm at now, I've learned some things that will make their journey a lot quicker. So you have to be tractable. The A, attitude. Oh my goodness. Attitude's everything. And that's the attitude of gratitude. Every day when I wake up, the first thing I do is I do my success journal, which is now a success and gratitude journal. Yes. And so I write down what I'm grateful for and who I'm grateful for. And I just started this during COVID. One of the things that, and this may sound strange to your audience, the way I'm about to phrase this, but COVID has been a blessing in my life. And one of the ways it's been a blessing is I've now been able to have deep connections and reconnections with people that I haven't talked to in years in some cases. Right. And it's like so amazing. And the way that really started is when I was doing my journals in the morning, if someone's name came to mind who I was grateful for, I usually write their name down. But then I'm like, why am I just writing their name down? Why am I thinking of them right now? And I'd think of a situation or a time of why I'm grateful they're in my life. And then I decided to take it to another level. I decided to, because of technology, I'd get on Messenger or however I was connected with them, and I would leave them a voice message. Now, here's the key to this. It wasn't a voice message that, oh my goodness, when they get this, they're going to love it and they're going to get back in touch with me. We're going to have a great conversation. Nothing to do with this. It was, hey, I thought of you today because of, and I want to let you know, I wrote you down in my gratitude journal. Thank you for being in my life. And then I send it with no attachment, whether they hear it or they don't, whether they respond or they don't. Because I want the universe to know I'm grateful for that person. Yeah. And that'll come
sending that energy out there. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the practices I actually ask all my students to do, especially during this time, because so many people are struggling, is I say to them, reach out to 3 people a day and ask 3 simple words. How are you? And if it opens up a conversation, then be there present in that conversation. Because you don't know, if you thought of that person as one of your people for the day, you don't know what they're going through. And maybe that connection is what they needed in that moment to get them through a tough time, right?
Sure.
So attitude is huge. And then the L, loyal. You've got to be loyal. And to me, the most important thing to be loyal to is your own dreams. Because how many times do we give up on ourselves and on our own dreams? We'll be loyal to others, absolutely. But most people tend to be more loyal to others than they are to themselves. You can't give what you don't have. Right. So don't give up on yourself. So that's what VITAL stands for. And if you follow that, you will be successful.
Yeah. It sounds very much in alignment with the principles that I mentioned. And I love that you love to teach, and that's intrinsic to your purpose. And you're really clear about that. And of course you love to train people. And I'm also hearing that being loyal to yourself might also include a little forgiveness for, mistakes that you made in the past, because you've had to in order to get back up. You had to be able to forgive yourself. Can you think of times when you've done that?
Oh, numerous. And because you're hitting it right on the head, Celeste. The saying that if you had a friend that treated you the way you treat yourself, they wouldn't be your friend for very long. But yet we take it from ourselves. So I one of the messages I love people to understand is learn to be more gentle with yourself, more forgiving. And not to the extent of you're just letting yourself off the hook for everything, but practicing that self-love is critical. And again, bring it back to, you can't give what you don't have. Because if you can't love yourself, how do you truly love others? You also
Right.
go into what's called needy love in that case, where you're loving people for what they give you or contribute to you, what you need from them. And that's not real
Right.
love.
That's
That's a
codependent much.
conditional, right? Right, exactly. I love how you said it, codependent much. And that's it. And imagine like being in a relationship, business or personal, where you appreciate and love that person for who they are, not what they do. And this has been, so that's one as an example. I love my dad. And when I finally started realizing that I love him for being who he is, not who I think he should be, because is there things that frustrate me? Absolutely. I know I always say to him, I'm like, Dad, at least I know it come by it honestly, my stubbornness. He goes, yeah, from your mother. And so it's our running joke now. And it's just like, so, but when you can love someone for truly who they are, with all their good, all their faults, all their whatever, that to me, that is a reflection of how you view yourself.
Yeah.
And then
That's
if you
wonderful.
view yourself that way, you will attract people who will then see you for who you are. And the people that are attracted to you are the ones that will be attracted to you being you, not who they think they want you to be.
Right. Right. Now, I was hearing you talk about the warrior camp, and you said event plus response equals outcome. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
like being unattached to the outcome. It also sounds like you're not letting fear interrupt your good. What are the dynamics and processes there?
Well, think about this. People think we have control, and you don't. Let that go. I love what one of my friends says. I nicknamed him years ago the quantum monk, because not only was he a monk for 8 years and did over 15,000 hours of meditation, but he is also studies quantum physics. And so he can tell you all about spirituality and back it up with the science. The man is, and what he said is, he says this: instead of being willing to live life, courageously allow life to live you.
Nice.
And so life happens, crap happens. You have no control over that. So the event does not equal the outcome. What you do have control over is how you respond or react to the event. And so because you do have control over that, you now have a decision in how your life flows. So if something happens in your life, like an example, I was overliving my passion at one point, Celeste, where I was training so much, I forgot to take care of me. I got burnt out and I herniated a disc. So I decided I needed to take a year off. And because of going through 2 back surgeries, that year turned into 3.5 years. And you talk about having to practice self-love at that point. Nothing more humbling than when I'm in bed now for over a month at the first point, not able to move, not able to get out of bed. There's nothing more humbling than when someone's got to come and wipe your butt after you go to the bathroom because you can't. It humbles you very, very quick. And so when I was coming through the surgeries and I had said, I'm going to take a year off, but all of a sudden a year came and a year went. And all of a sudden it's a year and a half. And life is going, hello, you said you're going to start training again. You've got a gift to share. It's been over a year, but I wasn't listening to the lessons. And have you ever noticed that when life gives you lessons, if you don't pay attention, the lesson comes back again with a little more intensity? Have you ever noticed that?
I call it a spiritual 2x4.
That's exactly what it is. And I was 2 years in, on August 10th, 2010. I'm 2 years into my break when the life gave me a 2x4, a spiritual 2x4 I couldn't ignore. I got attacked by a dog that lunged for my throat.
Whoa.
And instead of getting my throat, luckily he got my chin. And that may sound strange. Luckily, he got my chin, right? But when he attacked me and he got my chin and he tried to pull me down to the ground, I knew if he got me to the ground, I was dead. So I stood up. The gentleman walking the dog had to pull their jaws off of my chin. Now I got blood all over the place and, puncture wounds under my goatee, ripped through my jaw.
Whoa.
Now, in that moment, I had a choice. I could have looked at it and went, why did this happen to me? Or I could say, okay, why did this happen? And all of a sudden, a universal principle came to my mind the moment I said that. The universal principle of that which is not utilized is eliminated.
Yeah.
See, 1 inch further, the dog would have got my jugular, and me and my gift to the world would have been gone. And because I looked at it that way on how I was going to respond to the event, I could have gone into the victim. I could have got angry. I could have got mad. Why is this happening? But I chose to say, what is my lesson here? And it comes down to that saying you've probably heard, let me check this out. Everything happens for a reason. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
And do you believe that statement?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah.
Did you know that's not the whole statement? But
Okay.
interesting, most people only ever hear the first half. See, the whole statement is everything happens for a reason, and that reason is there to serve me.
Yeah.
See, now when you come from that curiosity, now you ask, okay, why? And I want to be clear to your audience, you may not get the answer right away. It might be years down the road, all of a sudden you're like, that's why that happened all those years ago.
Right.
But if you're coming with a curiosity, it opens you up to receiving more answers. And it actually gives you a better ability to respond or react to the event in a more favorable way to get the outcome that maybe favors you better. So when I asked the question that way of why did this happen to me, all of a sudden that principle came to my mind and I realized my gift could have been gone. And in that moment, I made a decision that I had to train again. I didn't have to train. I had taken care of the financial side years ago. I had to train because that's why I was on this planet. Right. And when you are committed, it's amazing how the universe will bend over backwards to support you. Because within 2 weeks of me making that decision, all of a sudden out of the blue, but not really out of the blue, because I knew something was coming, all of a sudden I'm being called to ask if I'd come out of retirement and start teaching again. And it was an easy answer of, yes, I don't need the lessons anymore. I got the 2x4. I'm good. And it still took me 1.5 years to fully come out of retirement because of my back surgeries. I knew I wasn't going to put my body through again what I had. So I wanted to make sure I took care of me. Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing about when they say this too is God, or say thank you to everything, because you don't know what the gift is ultimately going to be,
Right. Oh, look, one of my favorite songs by Garth Brooks. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. Because you think you may know what you want.
But are they unanswered?
Well, that's exactly it, right?
Right.
Because and that's why people struggle the most, that I found, is they're expecting a certain way that things should be. But when God gives you a different outcome, it's because there's a reason for that. And if you're open to it and you embrace it, it's amazing the life you can really, truly design for yourself.
We were trained at Agape as practitioners to say this or something better. Sometimes we don't know what's for our own good. It might be something that we hadn't even considered.
Yep.
So what's coming up in the world of Robert Raymond Riopel that our international audiences can attend? Or what's online? What you got to offer us?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, because you were so gracious, Celeste, to invite me to be a guest. What I'd love to, and I appreciate your time, because time is one of our most precious commodities. And B, I appreciate your audience's time for taking the time to listen to my craziness. This aerodynamic dude that just loves to have fun. And so
this is golden.
Yeah. Well, so what I'd love to do is, my first book, Success Left a Clue, is I would love if they just go to robertriopel.com. So just my name, ROBERTRIOPEL.com. They can actually download the full digital copy, not just a couple chapters, but the full digital copy of this book, and as our gift to them. Now, it does come with a caveat, though. It does come with a caveat. See, most people, they get a book, they read it, put it on the shelf, and it becomes shelf help. That's not why I wrote this book. I wrote it as a workbook, because the 6 steps in this that I go through, step number 3 is take action. Out of all the clues from around the world that I've noticed, the biggest difference between a successful person and non-successful is successful people take action. Non-successful people don't. So I wrote this with action steps all the way through it. And I encourage you, do the action steps. In fact, you'll start reading a chapter and it'll go, did you do the last action? If not, stop reading right now, go back and do that action before you read on. Because I know people are creatures of habit. And I promise, if you download the book and you do the action steps, you will be blown away by how your life goes in, elevates to another level. So I would love to offer that to your listeners for taking their time.
Well, that's a great challenge and a great opportunity. Yeah, wonderful. And thank you so much for being on Mystic Magic, and thank you so much for being a service to the world. And thank you so much for bringing your energy. You just exude love and joy and kindness. And so you can't buy that. And so I'm just very grateful that, and I know the audience will pick up on that as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
This is Mystic Magic, exploring our spirit to understand our lives. Okay.